Welcome to this presentation of our paper, Misalignments of Social and Numerical Identity, an Ontological Analysis. My name is Paul Johannesson, and my co-authors are Birger Andersson and Maria Bergholtz. Well, this paper is about identity, and identity has been discussed in ages in philosophy and more recently in the area of digital ecosystems. In philosophy, two important notions of identity are qualitative identity and numerical identity. Qualitative identity, that's about similarity in properties between two entities, and that can result in them being not totally identical, but varying in degrees of this identity. However, numerical identity, that is total qualitative identity, full similarity in properties, only holding between a thing and itself. And we see here that identity in this respect, it is inside an object, it's inherent in an object. On the other hand, if we move into digital ecosystems and look at social identity, that is something that is external to the object itself. That is that we have organizations that provide or assign identity to individuals and people and other entities. And they typically have some identifier, for example, a social security number or an employee number. So that is where we have this assignment of an identifier to some object. It's not inherent in the object in itself. Now, of course, we have this idea that the purpose of these social identities, that is to mirror numerical identities from an organizational point of view, so that we can identify and re-identify people and other objects in this organizational setting. And we should do it in accordance with numerical identity. But, of course, misalignments may occur, and this mirroring between the social identity and the numerical identity, the assigned identity and the inherent identity, that might break down. And it could be, for example, that it could be intentional, then we call it fraud, or it could just be due to some honest mistake. We could call it epistemic confusion. So what we have tried to sort out in this paper is the relationship between a numerical identity and social identity, the assigned identity. We started with a number of vignettes or some cases or illustrative cases. Here's one of them, the dishonest applicant. It is about a person who wants to be a citizen, and he presents himself as at the registration office and with some documents from another country. And the responsible officer, he thoroughly examines those documents and grants the citizenship. So everything seems to be in order, but it was later discovered that these documents were fraudulent. So in this situation, should we say that there is a citizenship? Is the citizenship valid or not? And can the person really be considered a citizen? Another case here, and it's almost the opposite. And this one is about a person who passes away, he's a citizen, but the citizen registry is not updated to record this fact. So although that person doesn't exist anymore, there are certain rights in some sense related to his citizenship that still exist. For example, the right to vote and allowances. And other people can actually exercise all of these rights. And of course, it's not lawfully, but it's still possible to exercise those rights. So something seems to exist, and should we say here that the citizenship still exists and that the citizen still exists or not? A third vignette here, it's about a corrupt officer. And here this this officer, he fraudulently enters into a citizen registry at the registration office, and he registers a new citizenship, although there is no person involved at all. And only this new citizenship is entered here. Then he sells it to some criminal, and multiple people are allowed to use this citizenship and, for example, to enter the country here. And no one discovers anything of this, and many people actually use that citizenship. So this is a realistic case, and that happens not in many cases, but it does happen sometimes. So should we say that there is a new citizenship here? And is there a new citizen or not? So those are the issues we try to sort out here. And we have constructed a model of this, and it is based on UFO, the Unified Foundational Ontology. So I will not try to go through all of these details here, but only the most important classes there. Okay, let's start here. We have an agent, and an agent, it's an entity that can perceive its environment and make decisions and take actions. An agent might be a human or a machine, so there is no uniform principle of identity, so therefore it is stereotyped as a category. Then we have a subject, and a subject that's an agent that is part of a social system and is influenced or affected or governed by it. It could, for example, be a nation state, or it could be a company. So then the subject would be respectively a citizen or an employee. And so these are roles, or more precisely role mixings, as we have as the stereotype here. Then for this social system, say a country or a company, then we need to be able to identify those subjects. And in order to do that, we need an identity issuer that is responsible for creating and maintaining those subjects, and also for providing social identities for them, so we can distinguish them and re-identify them. And it's often a governmental agency, or it could be a bank or a financial institution, or maybe also some big tech company. Then this identity issuer creates also a social identity. That's a semi-abstract entity, so it doesn't have any extension in space, but it has an extension in a limited extension in time, beginning and an end in time. And the point here, the purpose here of a social identity, it is that it should serve as a unique and stable and authorized reference for a subject. So we need some identifier here, and it could be, say, a social security number, vehicle identification number, and employee number. And then we have an identity assignment, which is a relator. And it is then that where we have an identity issuer who assigns a social identity to some subject in an event. We call it a social identity creation event, and it's kind of a declarative speech act. Okay. Then we also need to have this aspect of the mirroring between the social identity and the numerical identity. And we then need to determine the subject's numerical identity. And this is managed by some identity credential information. It could be, for example, a password, or it could be some biological characteristics, such as fingerprint, or some face scan, or some retina scan and so on. And by that we can check whether a certain individual has the same numerical identity. Okay, and then finally we have associated rights here to a social identity. And the right could be a privilege, for example, the privilege to do something, a claim that some agent or some subject has a relationship to another subject, which means that this subject has an obligation to the first one. It could be power also, so a subject could be able to create new social relationships. And the idea here is that we have modeled that a right is inherent in this social identity. And we'll see how that should work out later on, because that makes it possible to model or represent that someone can unlawfully or incorrectly somehow use the powers or the rights of other subjects. Okay, now let's see how this could work out in practice in this case. Here we have an identification event, meaning that someone identifies himself or herself as having a certain social identity and claiming that this is my social identity. And in order to work out, there must be an authentication event. And then we have some rule, we call it a verifier, and the verifier determines whether a subject's claim to an identity is correct or not. So this identity presents themselves as having a certain social identity, for example, having a certain social security number, and then this verifier really checks if that is correct or not, and then making use of this identity credential information. If it all works out, then a recognition relator is constructed or created. And this one expresses that the social system, say a country or a company, actually recognizes the agent with their claimed social identity, and it also acknowledges all those rights that are related to that social identity. Of course, it should be correct here, but sometimes it doesn't really work out, and sometimes someone can fraudulently claim that they have another identity, and still all their rights are respected. And we have also modeled here that a recognized an agent as a recognized subject, it's able to exercise those rights associated with the claimed social identity. Whether this is correct or not, the only requirement is that the verifier has said that these are correct. Okay, so this is what our model looks like. So let us revisit the vignettes again and see how we have how it works out there. And this is essentially our original model, but we have adapted it to a certain case, namely for Swedish citizens. So we have a role which is Swedish citizen, and we have a Swedish citizen identity, and we also have this Swedish social security number, and so on. If we have the dishonest applicant, where there was an applicant who didn't really have the right documents, but still pretended that these were correct. And in this case, we would definitely say that there is a Swedish citizen identity constructed here with the social security numbers and also those credential information and all the rights here. And they can work out for a certain period of time so that someone can claim and identify present themselves as that person, and when it works out in this verification event and this authentication event, then all those rights will be there. But does it mean that we have a Swedish citizen or a Swedish social identity assignment? That is more problematic, and we can't really answer that question in general. It depends on the laws or possibly the policies of Sweden, of that country, if this person or if this individual counts as a Swedish citizen, is deemed as a Swedish citizen or not. If we have the deceased citizen vignette instead, okay, we still have, even after this person has passed away, we still have this Swedish citizen identity. It shouldn't be that we should have removed it, but it is still in this case exists here. But of course, the individual has passed away, and clearly that then it can be no Swedish citizen here, and there can be no Swedish social identity assignment either. Finally, we have this vignette of the corrupt officer, and still we have this Swedish citizen identity. But we don't have any Swedish citizen at all, and we never have had it, and we don't have this assignment either, and we have never had it in that case. But still, this Swedish citizen identity, this can cause this has certain rights associated to it, and multiple people in different time periods, they can still exercise those rights that are related to that Swedish citizen identity. So this is how we have tried to model these situations about social and numerical identity. There are lots of different venues for future work and many unclear issues and to work upon. But I would just like to mention one. And it seems that what we have done here and the problems we have here, they are not solely related to social identity and numerical identity. They are not just identity issues. So they are more of social fact issues. Here is just one more vignette where we generalize beyond identity. Called the involuntary voter. So the point here is that during a meeting where people are voting, and here a newcomer enters the room, and the chairman requests everyone to vote by raising their hands. But the newcomer is unaware of this process, and he simply raises his hand to shoo away a fly. And still the chairman doesn't really understand this, and she counts the newcomer's raised hand as a vote. Did that newcomer actually cast a vote or not? This is not having to do with identity, but still the same issues here about recognition of some fact, how it should be counted as some social fact, those individuals and those roles that are present here, that mirrors very much, and it's very similar to what we could see here in our model. So these could be counted as some kind of epistemic confusion, and we intend to work further on these issues. So, thank you very much for your attention.